Hey everybody, welcome back to All Fiction is Fantasy. Daniel here. I hope you're doing well, and if you're not, I hope you are soon. Okay, it's time for another book haul. Over the last month and a half or so, I've been doing some shopping on eBay, and a couple of weeks ago, I did a day trip where I just kind of drove around my local area and hit up some used bookstores. So we'll take a look at some of these stacks, and then at the end of the video, we'll take a look at another stack of books that is a little bit out of my wheelhouse, but I'm excited to read them. So we'll talk about those later. So let's start with the larger books here, the trade paperbacks and the hardbacks, and then we'll go into the vintage paperbacks. These two Robert E. Howard collections. So I've been collecting this series off and on for a couple of years now. The Weird Works of Robert E. Howard. These are volumes 7 and 9. I just buy them when I can find them for a good price, and this is the way that I've been collecting my Robert E. Howard fiction. So we have Black Hounds of Death and Beyond the Black River. And I think these are really nice. Nice paper, good size font, well printed with good introductions. So I think these are a good way to collect Howard. These aren't worth a lot of money, so you can usually find them for about 20 or 30 bucks. But this has a good introduction. Then it has a few stories: The Grisly Horror, Jewels of the Gwalhur, Beyond the Black River, The Challenge from Beyond, and Shadows of Zambula. Shadows of Zambula I have reviewed before as part of the Sword and Sorcery series. Yeah, that's like super racist story. That story did not sit well with me. But I don't think it's a very good Conan story. And then here we have Black Hounds of Death, and Black Hounds of Death has Red Nails in there, so that's nice. It has Black Canaan. I've never read that one, but I've heard it's pretty controversial. Always Comes Evening, Red Nails, Solomon Kane's Homecoming, Black Hound of Death, and so on. Dig Me No Grave, that's a Cthulhu story. Cthulhu mythos, so that's a pretty good story there. And this one also has some of Howard's poetry. So those are nice collections. I'm glad to get, I think I'm missing one volume in this set. So next up we have H.P. Lovecraft's The Curse of Yig and selected ghastly ghost writings. So these are all stories that H.P. Lovecraft was hired to finish or flesh out or maybe even write for other writers. And the reason why I wanted to get this is I lacked a story about Yig, and I needed to find The Curse of Yig in a collection, and I thought this was a pretty cool collection. It does have a cool introduction by S.T. Joshi. It's a pretty nice edition. It has some art in it. I don't think the art is fantastic. It doesn't really fit the style of the prose or the subject matter, but it's a nice little edition. And I did like that introduction by S.T. Joshi, and it has a cool article or a cool essay in the back called Did Lovecraft Write Lovecraft Pastiches by Robert M. Price, talking about how when Lovecraft was hired by other writers to finish, to flesh out, or to actually write their stories, was he actually just writing Lovecraft pastiche? And I think that's pretty cool. But as part of my series on reviewing a story for each of the elder ones, each of the outer gods, each of the ancient ones found in the Arkham Horror board game, I needed a good story for Yig. And I have never read The Curse of Yig. And The Curse of Yig was something that H.P. Lovecraft was hired to write for Zelia Bishop. So looking forward to checking that out. Next up, we have a collection of tales from the Eternal Champion, Michael Moorcock's Eternal Champion, of course, of which Elric is one, and that is called Pawn of Chaos. Now, the reason why I wanted to get Pawn of Chaos, the main reason why, is for this story right here. C. Dean Anderson, aka Asa Drake. Fans of the channel will know that I am a huge Asa Drake fan and a fan of C. Dean Anderson. And I'm trying to collect all of his short stories, and there isn't a single volume of collected short stories for C. Dean Anderson or Asa Drake. So I'm having to buy a whole bunch of different volumes to get all of his short stories. But this one here I am particularly interested in because it is the War Skull of Hell. And this is a new Bloodsong story, or new when this was published. A Bloodsong story that's not from the novels. So really looking forward to returning to that world I love. Bloodsong, the Warrior Witch of Hell trilogy is for me top tier sword and sorcery, so I'm looking forward to that. And this has other stories, as a story by Michael Moorcock, John Shirley. I always love reading John Shirley. Let's see here. Caitlin R. Kiernan, Gary Gygax, Robert D. Vardaman, Brian Herbert. And yeah, so this looks like it could be a pretty cool collection of Eternal Champion stories. And then speaking of short stories by C. Dean Anderson, I also picked this up, and this is getting increasingly rare and kind of hard to find. But this is called Small Bites, edited by Garrett Peck and Keith Gueva. And so this has stories. This has 2 stories by C. Dean Anderson. And let's see here. In the pages of these books lurk many man-eating creatures. Some are zombies returned from death to eat the flesh and brains of the living. Some are ordinary animals, no longer content to linger at the bottom of the food chain. Some are were creatures. Humans able to assume animal form and oh so very hungry when they do. Small Bites presents nearly 200 horrific stories, all told in a mere 500 words or less. So this is a collection of a flash fiction all about man-eating creatures. And I believe this actually has 2 very short stories by C. Dean Anderson. And so that is kind of the main reason why I wanted to buy this collection. And I found one that wasn't super expensive, but the others on eBay were going for quite a bit of money. So if this sounds interesting to you, you may want to move on it sooner rather than later. Next up is a book called As It Is Written by Clark Ashton Smith, or is it? So I guess there's some controversy out there around the fact that maybe Clark Ashton Smith didn't actually write this. This was published by Donald M. Grant, so this is a Grant publication. I always like finding Grant publications when I can. This was signed, so this is a copy of 1,250 copies, and 1,200 are for sale, and this one is signed by the illustrator. And Donald M. Grant, he just puts out fantastic volumes. Anytime I can find one of his editions for or one of their editions for a good price, I will pick it up. And I thought this was an interesting kind of piece of history just because of that controversy around who actually wrote this. And they actually talk a little bit about that in the introduction here. And yeah, it's a curiosity. And some people who read this say it sounds nothing like Clark Ashton Smith. Other people say, of course, it was written by Clark Ashton Smith, but who knows? So this says that it's a long forgotten Oriental fantasy from the early pen of Clark Ashton Smith. Or is it? This is a real curiosity here. Just kind of an impulse purchase on eBay when I was messing around shopping on there. And this is a kid's book. This is an early chapter book called The Bone People. And I bought this because I thought it had some really cool art. And I've never heard of it. It's written by 3 people. I think this was kind of a book for schools that you might read in elementary school. It's a real early chapter book. But I thought it sounded kind of interesting. And I thought the art was really cool. I like these kind of old vintage drawings. Let's see, when was this originally? 1970 and 1975. So this is the Space Science Fiction series. So this is all a series here. And it actually has some reading guides at the end. So you can have a little questionnaire, maybe questions about space or about spacecraft, the space deed, and vocabulary. So there's your vocabulary words. But overall, I just thought this was a neat little curiosity. And I love those skull people. I think they look super cool, super creepy. So I'm looking forward to reading this. Sometimes it's fun to just read old kids' books and see kind of what was going on in that space. Okay, now we'll look at some new novelizations I'm adding to my collection. One of them is a Holy Grail. Actually, kind of 2 of them are. The main one here is The Thing. I finally found a copy of The Thing by Alan Dean Foster. Curious how this was a novelization of a movie based off of a short story, but this is based off of the screenplay written by Bill Lancaster. And this is a pretty difficult novelization to find. The one with the movie poster with the light shining through the guy's face is even harder to find, and that thing goes for crazy amounts of money. But this thing is not easy to come by either, and I finally found a really nice copy at a price that I could afford. I'm really looking forward to reading The Thing. I like Alan Dean Foster, and it's one of my favorite movies. I like the end, the synopsis here. 12 men trapped in the Antarctic. 11 discover the intruder. 10 battle the alien force. 9 agonize for the answer. 8 desperate to be spared. 7 consumed one by one. 6, 5, 4, 3. They will all die unless anything stops the thing. Great little tagline there. And then 2 others here. So Return to Oz, written by Joan D. Vinge. Return to Oz, fantastic movie. And really looking forward to reading this to see if it has that same kind of element of creepiness from the movie. One of the creepiest kids movies I've ever seen. Absolutely love Return to Oz. And then, yes, Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome, also written by Joan D. Vinge. And Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome is my favorite of the original 3 Mad Max movies. Of course, Fury Road is my ultimate favorite. I mean, that's just like the greatest movie ever made. But I love Beyond Thunderdome. I think it is fantastic. I love the myth of Max, how he is worshipped. His myth, his legacy, his legend is worshipped by this young cargo cult. And I think the action in Thunderdome is fantastic. The whole last car chase scene is just so good. And I think this was kind of where the height of kind of Gibson's prowess as an actor as well. I watched Beyond Thunderdome all the time as a kid, and it has forever been one of my favorite movies. So really looking forward to reading this novelization. Okay, now let's start with this stack here. So I found this pretty beat up copy, this Valentine adult fantasy version of The Three Imposters by Arthur Machen, but it was only $2 at half price. It's has seen better days, definitely, but this is a great story, and glad to have this version here with that introduction by Lynn Carter. I always like reading Lynn Carter's introductions, and there's actually a quote here by James Branch Cabell, and we will actually talk about James Branch Cabell in just a few minutes. Now, Mick Farren is an interesting author. He wrote a book, the only book of his that I've read that I really enjoyed also is called The Quest for the DNA Cowboys. And it's kind of this gonzo, cyberpunk, drug-fueled adventure novel, very similar to something that maybe Rudy Rucker might have written. It reminded me a lot of something like White Light by Rudy Rucker. But he was a punk rocker, so he was kind of this counterculture guy. And I was thinking about Quest for the DNA Cowboys, and I went to the internet and just looked up Mick Farren on a whim and just discovered that he had written a whole bunch of other novels. And so, I should check out some of his other stuff. So I picked up a collection on eBay here. So this is a Necrom that definitely looks like it has some cyberpunk things going on. And then I picked up Mars, the Red Planet. Not quite sure what this one is about. The Feelies also has a kind of cyberpunk vibe going on. So looking forward to reading that. And then kind of more of a straightforward science fiction tale here, Citizen Fade. And I believe the character in Citizen Fade is somebody who Mick Farren has written about before. So kind of a recurring character in Mick Farren's novels. And then I have never read any Dean R Coons. When I started reading horror back in the early 80s, it was kind of an unwritten rule that you either chose King or Coons. And if you chose King, you never read Coons. If you chose Coons, you never read King. And of course, I mean, that rule didn't really actually exist, but it just seemed to be that way. And I've always wanted to read Coons, especially some of his earlier novels. So I picked up 3 of his earlier novels, and I picked up The Vision, Demon Seed, which was turned into a movie, and I've never actually seen the movie either, and Shattered. So looking forward to reading all 3 of these. Looking forward to discovering some cool old Coons novels. Maybe I will fall in love with him, and that would be fantastic because of just how easy it is to get these old Coons paperbacks. So looking forward to checking out those. This one, I've never read anything by Graham Masterson before, but I just love that cover, that Death Dream. I thought that was a cool cover. It looks super cheesy, but kind of looking forward to maybe checking that out. I have a buddy who's read some Masterson, and he says he's very, very hit or miss, with more misses than hits. But we'll see. If you've read anything by Masterson, let me know. All right, let's take a look at this stack here. So I picked up another Pathfinder novel, and this one by Howard Andrew Jones. So Howard Andrew Jones writes a lot of modern sword and sorcery, but this is one of his Pathfinder novels, and that is The Plague of Shadows. So I am enjoying finding these old Pathfinder novels, especially the ones that are in this smaller pocket-sized mass market size. I like these, and I might just start picking them up whenever I see them, looking for maybe some hidden Pathfinder gems there. I picked up another Rick Hatala novel here called Little Brothers. I thought this sounded pretty interesting, so looking forward to checking that out. And now, speaking of James Branch Cabell, James Branch Cabell is an author I had never heard of. He did have a quote here on the back of 3 Imposters. I wonder if you are familiar with the uncanny genius Arthur Machen. Well, yes, I am familiar with with Machen. I love Machen. The Great God Pan is one of the all-time great supernatural stories. So I know nothing about Cabell, but I wanted to buy some of his novels. So here we have a Valentine adult fantasy version of The Cream of the Jest with an introduction by Lynn Carter. And then we also have maybe his most popular novel, and that is Jurgen or Jurgen. This is kind of a body, kind of erotic novel. I think this was maybe banned at one point, but this sounds really funny and really interesting. So I have no idea what kind of stuff he writes. They're kind of like adult fantasies, but I don't think they have a lot of magic. They're more maybe satire, social satire with a fantasy kind of dressing. I am actually not sure. So this is kind of a brand new author, a brand new kind of fiction for me. So looking forward to checking that out, but I have no idea if I'm going to like him or not. But these covers are fantastic, that is for sure. And then we have some more Conan novels, and these are the 5 Conan novels written by Steve Perry. So Steve Perry has a great series, the Matador series. I love The Man Who Never Missed, the first one. And then we have Matador and the Machiavelli Complex. And all 3 of those books are great. The Man Who Never Missed is fantastic. Great, great space pulp stories. But here he wrote 5 Conan novels. And so we have Conan the Defiant. We have Conan the Freelance. Conan the Formidable. We have Conan the Indomitable. And finally, Conan the Fearless. I haven't heard too many good things about these, but I wanted to get them just because I really do like Steve Perry a lot, and I like these covers. Most of these are in pretty good condition. I think one of them has definitely seen better days, but they weren't a lot of money. So if you're looking for some old Conan novels, these might be a good place to go. Okay, so we have one more stack here of some vintage mass markets. Another Robert McCammon. So I am going to be, I've said on an earlier video, going to be diving into Robert McCammon. I did not like Swan Song at all, but that's the only thing I've read. So I've been slowly buying some of his other books to give him a chance again, because I think I should like Robert McCammon. And I've heard a lot of good things about Gone South. And so looking forward to reading this kind of a Southern Gothic, not neo-noir, but Southern Gothic detective horror novel. Really curious about this one. This was a cool find that I found at a store near where I live called Magus Books, and that is Beyond the Gate of Dream by Lynn Carter. A Lynn Carter fantasy. This is actually a collection of short stories and uncollected things and just weird kind of fantasy curiosities written by Lynn Carter. So looking forward to reading that. This cover is awesome here. I have no idea what it is about, but I saw this cover and I just had to get it. And that is Fortress, a novel of terror by Gabriel Lord. What violence lurks beneath the innocence of children? 9:25 a.m. Mac the Mouse, Pussycat, Daffy Duck, and Father Christmas are outside the one-room schoolhouse, guns in hand. 9:35 a.m. The children and teacher are taken captive in a violent display of brute force. The ransom, a cool $1 million. 4:05 p.m. On an isolated barren landscape in a deep black cave, the victims face a chilling fate. Their only choice is to fight back. Fortress. No one will ever speak of what happened in the cave. What the heck? That sounds so cool. And I like how it is organized by time. And it looks like it takes place mainly on one day. We have May 8th, May 9th, and then a huge jump to July 21st. Really interesting way to organize their chapters here. And yeah, this just sounds really fascinating. Very curious about that. Then we have Among Madmen, written by Jim Starlin and Dana Grazunius, with 50 illustrations. So this is an illustrated novel. This is a novel that I have read before, and I've been wanting to pick up, and I found this really nice copy at a Half Price Books for like $2. And I read this a long time ago, probably about 10, 12 years ago, from a book exchange from an old online forum that I was a part of for many, many years. It broke off of Rotten Tomatoes. We had a huge group of people on Rotten Tomatoes, and we were always in the same threads. And so one of the guys started a V-Bulletin forum, and I was a part of that community for maybe 15 years. And I still talk to some of the people who I met in that forum. Really fun old days of when the internet was cool, when the internet was fun. But Among Madmen, it's kind of a post-apocalyptic, but there aren't really zombies or anything kind of supernatural. It's mainly about how humanity becomes the really bad things and the brutality of mankind among madmen. I don't remember loving the novel when I read it, but it has stuck with me, and I just kind of wanted to have a nice copy. I also picked up another copy. I already owned this, but A Quest for Symbolist by Michael Shea. This was his kind of official sequel to Dying Earth by Jack Vance. And I picked this up because it's in better condition than the one I have, and then I can give the one I have away to a friend who might need it. This is a 4-part series that I picked up by Neil Barrett Jr., and I mainly bought these because of the covers by Josh Kirby and by Ken Kelly. I think he did this one. Who did that? Yeah, Ken Kelly. So Ken Kelly did this version, this cover, and then the other 3 covers were done by Josh Kirby. I love Josh Kirby's art, and this series sounds really interesting. It takes place in a future Earth or a future planet where anthropomorphic animals are the main beings, and one of the main characters is a pig. It's a sword and sorcery fantasy series starring an anthropomorphic pig. And I have read a few things. I knew nothing about it when I bought it. I just really liked the covers, and I liked that the bookstore had all 4. So I picked it up, and I'm really curious about this one. So it sounds very, very cool. Then we have another Conan novel. This one written by Andrew Offutt. So Andrew Offutt, he was an editor on a series of sword and sorcery collections called. What were those called? I'll flash them on the screen. My mind is completely blank, but we've taken a look at them before. But this was one of his Conan novels. Not sure how good it is, if it is good at all, but I thought I would give it a chance. And then here we have a science fiction novel written by Gardner Fox. So we've taken a look at some Gardner Fox stuff before. Kirik. And this is called The Hunter Out of Time, Cosmic Manhunt in 4 Dimensions. really nice quality. So Magus Books is a really cool bookstore near where I live. And they one thing you can always one thing you can rely on from Magus Books is that their books are always in really good condition, and I appreciate that. You pay a little bit of a premium for them, but they don't take things that are falling apart. So also at Magus Books, I picked up this Henry Kuttner novel called The Mask of Circe. And this is kind of a retelling of some Greek myths, I believe. Another Alan Gardner novel called Elidor. I thought that was a pretty cool cover there. Gardner has written quite a few fantasies, and he's most well known for The Weird Stone of Brisingame and The Moon of Gomorth, or Gomrath, I should say. And those are the two things that he is most well known for. And then this sounds awesome. I definitely was very happy to find this. I love that cover by a book by Paul W. Fairman. And this is The World Grabbers, a dramatic, suspenseful novel inspired by the popular TV program One Step Beyond. So One Step Beyond was kind of a science fiction anthology show, a little bit like Outer Limits or Twilight Zone. So yeah, really curious about this one. This one was $9, so not cheap, but man, just in such great condition. So those were all of the kind of vintage mass market paperbacks I got. And now two of my reading friends read an epic fantasy series not too long ago, and they won't shut up about it. And I actually don't read a lot of epic fantasy, but I like to dabble every once in a while to give it a shot. So after the last time I talked to them, I actually pulled the trigger on a complete collection of the Malazan Book of the Fallen series. Someone on eBay was selling the complete series, and I said, okay, you guys won't shut up about the series, so I'm going to try to read it. Now, I don't read a lot of epic fantasy. I prefer single volume stories or short stories when it comes to fantasy, shorter stories when it comes to fantasy, shorter novels. You can't get more opposite than this giant 1,600 pages, 1,300 pages for this one. But this will probably be the single longest book I've read when I finally read it. I think this is longer than Lonesome Dove. But, I've tried Saunderson, I've tried Robert Jordan, I've tried Martin, and I'm just not into that kind of thing. Steven Erikson, the Malazan series, sounds like it might be more in my wheelhouse because it is so kind of based off of role-playing games. I believe they were playing, was it Pathfinder or GURPS or something, and they developed this world and these characters and these stories. Very similar, I think, to how Weiss and Hickman with the Dragonlance. Dragonlance is probably the only epic fantasy that I really love. I do like a lot of those older Forgotten Realms books too, like the Icewind Dale trilogy, and of course the original Drizzt books. But so I am about halfway through Gardens of the Moon. Just about halfway through, and I am enjoying it. I think it has a really rough start, but famously, this was not written as a novel. This is actually originally was written as a screenplay, and then Erikson adapted that screenplay into one novel, and then that version was scrapped, and then this is kind of the second version. It's a little confusing. So I've heard that the first book is a little rough, but then it gets a lot better from the second book on. I'm enjoying this. I'm not loving it, but I am enjoying it. It reminds me a whole heck of a lot of Black Company by Glenn Cook. And Black Company I read for the first time last year. And I think that was a pretty big inspiration on Erikson, especially the bridge burner crew. They are just straight out of Black Company. And I'm really liking the characters of Tattersail and Hairlock. I think those guys are super cool. And yeah, overall, I'm enjoying it. And I'm really looking forward to getting lost in a big epic series. It's been a very long time since I have been lost in an epic series. And I'm hoping that this one does capture my attention enough to read through it. I'm not going to read it back to back 10 times. I think that would drive me insane. So what I'm thinking about doing is in between each Malazan novel, I'm going to read a novelization as a palate cleanser. So after Gardens of the Moon, I'm going to prioritize The Thing. And then I think after Dead House Gates, I will read Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome. So I think that'll be a good combination. Hopefully I like this series. If I don't, I'll sell it and pass it on. But my two best reading friends, they won't shut up about it. They're constantly talking about it. So I'm like, okay, I'm tired of feeling left out of these conversations. That is what you call peer pressure. So, all right, you guys. Well, I hope you enjoyed this book haul video. We will talk to you later. Bye bye.